Hey everybody, Al with leadinglandlord.com. We have a special guest at our monthly meeting, and we got Erin Spradlin with us, and she has her own YouTube channel. What's the name of that YouTube channel?
It is just Erin and James Real Estate. It is
Erin and James Real Estate. She's got a lot of great stuff, so I invited her on to give us some tips. And Erin, I'm going to be your edited man, and you can be Johnny, and I'll just comment as we go. Okay.
Perfect.
So ease on, take the wheel, Erin.
Okay, great. Well, first off, thanks for having me. I'm super excited and super flattered that you guys would spend your time with me and that Al would seek me out. I would say this morning, I was telling my husband what I was doing, and he was like, "You're talking to Al Williamson? He's all over Bigger Pockets. He's kind of a big deal." So, anyways, I'm flattered to be here, and I appreciate.
Erin didn't know who I was, guys.
Sorry. I'm not on Bigger Pockets as much as everybody, as much as my husband, for sure.
That's okay.
But I really appreciate it, and I appreciate our call yesterday. And again, I'm just flattered that you're here, that you invited me here. So I am going to talk about medium-term rentals and then just kind of the top 10 tricks. Please feel free to interrupt me. I'm not that interesting as a speaker. I would love to have questions if you have them as they come up.
Oh, you found the right group for that.
Good. Awesome. A little background on me before we get started. I've been in real estate since 2017. We primarily work in Denver and Colorado Springs, which is kind of a big region. But the reason for that is just because I lived in Denver for the last 20 years, but I grew up in Colorado Springs. And depending on what my clients wanted, there's better locations for them depending on what they're focused on and how they want to use that property. So we work with buyers, sellers, and investors. Our original niche was STRs. We actually, when the laws started to come, Denver, I think, was an early adopter of a short-term rental law. And so when that happened, we kind of made it our focus to know every single law in the state for different cities, because obviously it's city to city, and really be able to guide our clients on that. And then in October of 2020, I was sitting in a car waiting for James to do something, and I heard an NPR story about how 20 million people were planning on moving or doing traveling. Now that they were allowed to do that because of remote work, they were no longer geographically tethered to their jobs. And so it was very interesting to me. And it had always been interesting to me, like kind of how remote work, how COVID would force the hand of bosses that were reluctant about medium-term work, about remote work. I knew early in the pandemic, I thought, a lot of people that have had reservations about this are not going to have a choice. And it's my personal belief that a lot of people are more effective at home. But then just sitting in the car that day in October of 2020, I kind of married the two as far as how that would impact real estate, if people were now allowed to do remote work. And I know I just saw something the other day that said by the end of 2022, they think that 25% of white collar workers will be full-time remote work. That seems aggressive to me, but again, I think that is why I am certainly paying attention to this niche and why I'm so interested.
I think that's funny because I know your stance on it being non-negotiable for you.
Yeah.
So why do you think it's aggressive for that?
I guess I embrace it. I think it's the right thing to do. And I think it's a good way to get the best employees when you have a bigger geography, and the best of the best can also kind of say what they want and work. I guess I feel like 25% of white collar workers by the end of 2022, I guess I just kind of question that stat, especially with what is happening with some of the companies and having pushback on that. I do think it's coming. I think it's the future, but even right now we're seeing some big time companies like Apple, their employees are starting to do, or have been doing for a while, pledges, or what, not pledges, but like they're having people sign stuff to say we want to do remote work, and Apple's pushing against it, and I think some of the other companies are too. So when I say that 25% is aggressive, I just mean that seems like a high number to me. I think in the future it's going to happen. Do I believe it's that high right now? I don't know about that. Did that answer your question?
It did. Thank you.
Okay, great. And then finally, we have a website, we have TikTok, we have Insta, we have YouTube. At the very end, I will post all those links, and I'm sure Al will too. But just if you're looking for more content, and I know he puts out a lot of content, we have all of that.
Oh, you're
All
gonna get a
right.
bunch of subscribers.
Yeah, I would love more subscribers for sure.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, consulting. I do a consulting for $100 for a call, 30 minutes to an hour. And then the book, American Nomads, it sounds like some of you are already familiar with it. It's on Amazon in paperback or Kindle form. I will stop plugging at the moment, but just wanted to get that up quickly. All right. So medium-term rentals, I was just kind of broke down 10 different tips about how to think about them. The first one for me is know thy audience. Someone in my comments the other day for the videos asked, why don't you talk about traveling nurses more? I don't talk about traveling nurses as much because I feel like most people that are in the medium term space are familiar with medical professionals, their large stipends, and the fact that they've been traveling. In fact, if you are thinking about a 30+ day furnished rental, you probably are thinking about it as the traveling nurse model. So, well, I think that they're a great group because they tend to have a lot of money. They tend to be responsible. They tend to need a lot more sleep than they need to party. I think a lot of people are already kind of familiar with this group. So I tend to talk about them less. Obviously, they're the number one. They're the ones that people have been tracking for a long time and paying attention to. By the way, Al, how long do you want me to go on this? Just I can.
Well, we're gonna just keep it to an hour.
Okay, great. Okay, so second, college kids. I've had a ton of luck with college kids. I know some people have reservations about college kids, but when you think about it, they're kind of a natural tenant pool because they leave the dorms, they want to live with other people, they have a limited period of time that they want to be there, and they don't have furniture. So we have now had 2 rounds of college kids. I think in each round we had 5 kids per piece. We had their parents co-sign. We put big deposits on them, and I really like them as
Wow.
tenants. You know,
What about the summer? You let them off for the summer, or how do you do that?
yeah. So last summer we let them off and then moved it into a short-term rental during that period. Although even with that, I say short-term rental, but it actually ended up being nurses that came in for 3 months. But yeah, I mean, the college kids were great because they rented from September to May. This is Colorado College in Colorado Springs. And then we had nurses cover it last year. And then this year, same thing. They were moving out June 1st, but we just did some renovations on the property. And then we ended up getting someone in August 1st for it.
Because the make one, the dove feather them together to make so those nurses often get extended, and then you want to bring your next round of college students in, and then you're like, that's my only how would you handle that? That's just a natural normal risk, or you just want to extend for them?
Yeah, I think it's a normal risk, but honestly, I would rather go with college kids than nurses in this scenario, just because nurses, even though I agree, I think a lot of medium term renters extend, and certainly nurses do. I don't see a lot of them extending for 9 months the way college kids, it's like it's just
I
out.
mean, I'm talking about that summer gap. That
I
3 months
mean,
in the summer. I like what you're saying because it's a nice 9 month, and then you have a gap for the summer, and then they start up again the fall semester. So filling that summer semester is you said you have the ability to do shorts or short-term rentals, so that's not a problem then.
yeah, we do. So I think, for that particular property, we have the rights, we got grandfathered in to do an Airbnb for it. So we could just do shorts, but it just turned out that we didn't end up doing that because nurses came in and were interested. And in general, I think it just depends on what your preference is, but I would always take a medium term renter, whether that's a month or 2 months or 3 months or 9 months over a short term renter because it's just a lot less communication. I was looking at your site actually, Al, and you're talking about that and the fact that it is a lot of work and there is a lot of attention paid to the short term rental. And I agree with that. So, and even when I have gaps, I still try and fill them with medium term renters. That's what I'm trying to say basically.
I gotcha. Right on.
All right. So third, people getting divorced. That's sad. But I think that there are a lot of people that sometimes want to, maybe they and their spouse. We definitely saw this during COVID. The idea of just, you know, continuing to be together, maybe you think something needs to change. And so we had a lot of people come in during COVID that were like, we haven't necessarily had the best relationship for a long time. And the idea of being stuck together during this particular time period is not appealing. So they ended up renting out our place. And I think a lot of people need that if you're considering a divorce, because you're not actually sure if you want to move on from your spouse and you need to stay in the same area where your job is or where your kids are. And so we found some demand there. That is sort of it's an interesting demographic, only because I'm not exactly sure how you get in front of them. I mean, that might be more of a play of having relationships, excuse me, having relationships with divorce lawyers or being in front of people that service divorced people considering divorces. But certainly we've had good luck with them. Excuse me, been a little under the weather this week. All right.
You gotta get James to bring you some water. Where's your support?
Yeah, no kidding.
Where's the green room?
All right. So number 4, people moving somewhere new. I think this is really smart. These are people that have moved to a community and then they're not sure that they want to look at different neighborhoods and whatnot before they make a decision about where they're going to live. Excuse me, guys. Sorry. Okay. So moving somewhere new and wanting to make a decision before they commit to a certain neighborhood. I think this is really smart because you certainly see this in Denver where people come in. There's a particular area called Cherry Creek, which is very expensive. And then there's a neighborhood next to it called Glendale, which frequently advertises as Cherry Creek, but it's not the same. So you have people come in, they're checking out a city, they're liking it, and then they decide where they want to move. I apologize. I'm going to grab a glass of water.
Okay.
So that I prevent this nonstop coughing. Hang on real quick.
Right on. Everyone's filing in. We want her to do that. Hey, Jody, good to see you. You there in the buckle of the Bible Belt? I'll give you that.
I'm Billy Graham, Stephen Furtick. I mean, she's,
Oh, Steven's coming to town. He's coming to Sacramento.
I know. I wish I could go. That's Mom and I. We've been there for a long time, and so we love it when we see him hit the road. It's cool.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I bring you back, Erin.
I apologize for that. Thank you for your patience on that, but I didn't think that it would be better to drink a glass of water than for you to continue to listen to me coughing. Okay, and then finally, remote workers. This is, obviously my book is American Nomads, Finding and Renting to Remote Workers. It's that last part that I really care about and that excites me. And the reason for that is whether or not that 25% stat of 25% of white collar workers will be fully remote work by the end of 2022. Whether or not that's true, I think it is a very clear projection that remote work is going to be the future. And the reason for that, again, is that it kind of makes sense, not just for the employee. It makes a lot of sense for the employer. You can source from a much wider pool of people. You also don't have to pay for commercial real estate, which can cost a lot, or as many IT professionals, etc. So I do think remote workers are the future. And I think a lot of those people have quite a bit of money. They're, mid 20s to mid 30s, and they haven't quite settled down yet. They want to do travel. They want to have that experience. And so that is why I'm so gung ho on this. And so paying attention to this movement. Any questions on this before I move to the next slide?
Go ahead. We're only on tip 1. I'm going to keep asking you questions. It'll slow you down too much. But I agree with you. I agree with you, but I want to tease out this link because there's a small jump between, more people are going to be working remote and because remote working from home and working remote are two different things. So how connect those two for me?
I guess it depends on why I think, to me, a lot of the difference here will be if you have kids. And I think as time has passed, I think during COVID, that was a little bit different thing because it was a shakeup in life for all of us. And I definitely know some people that traveled with kids, but it seemed like a real headache. And again, that might have been an opportunity for them because their kids were remote school wise. But if you have kids, I agree. I think when you work from home, that's different because you have the benefit of working from home, but you're not necessarily looking to travel. So in some ways, I think when you have a kid, that kind of ends the remote work situation, in my opinion, or it's really going to limit the number. I think that singles or couples that are remote workers are very interested in this idea of traveling to different places for a month or two and working there without necessarily telling their employer, and just having that different experience. But I agree. I think working from home is different than remote work. But I think a lot of people that work from home would switch into remote work if they had the ability to do that.
I find that to be the case as well, especially the 30-year-old crew.
Yeah, because I think they're making a little bit of money, right? Like they're pretty comfortable at that point. They feel good in their career, and they want to see the world a little bit.
Right.
All right. So on that note, tip number 2, vocab. I'm not sure how relevant this is right now, but I think in the future it's going to be relevant. And I think people looking to build content around that, and I'm not sure if people on this are looking to build content, but again, this would come up when you're talking about your listing and your headline, how you might advertise it. So just kind of knowing the vocabulary around it. Obviously, traveling nurse model, I've talked about that in the sense that everybody kind of knows that model. Or if you've been introduced to this medium term world, you probably know it as the traveling nurse model. I know that your group calls it extended stays. I've been seeing a lot of medium or midterm rentals. I was calling it American Nomads, or the remote worker model. And then this week, when I was just pulling some articles and doing some research, they were talking about slow mads. So again, nomads, but in the sense that they're hanging out in areas for 1 or 2 or 4 months. I think it was 56%. I think the stat was 56% or more of remote workers stay for three or more months. And that was the topic and why they were calling them slow mads, are that a lot of people, to your point, Al, they think they're going to come in, but then they end up extending the lease. And so they stay longer than they think. So slow mads is a term, bleisure or pleasure, depending on how you say the word leisure or leisure. But that's business leisure or business leisure. I don't
Yeah.
love that word. But it seems like of all the new ones kind of emerging, slow mads, bleisure, workation, it seems like bleisure is the one that's most popular and starting to show up more places. And then workcation is just kind of the idea that
I
you're
see.
traveling.
I see that bleisure one coming from the hotel industry a lot. They've been the more of the podcasts I've listened to from them, they kind of blend that word in. Workation was really big. Like in the middle of COVID, I heard a lot of that. Same with staycation and workation. That was kind of popular back then.
Yeah, I had heard staycation. I hadn't heard bleisure as much, but it's interesting. Like this week, I'm seeing it everywhere, and it definitely, again, of all of them, it seems like it's the one that's taking off the most. It's interesting that it's coming out of the hotel industry because, I mean, the hotel industry isn't as well set up for this, in my opinion, as obviously an Airbnb or someone's house would be. So tip number 3, where to advertise. Obviously, so the 2 that I advertise with are Furnish Finder and Airbnb. Before I go on, are you guys advertising anywhere else?
Yeah, I'm big on pushing them to make sure they have VRBO in there. If those are the top 3, and then I'm almost insisting that they have some Google presence and get found that way. So really pressing the direct booking.
That's great. And are you having a lot of luck with direct booking, or how is that going?
Yeah, anyone else want to comment? I do. That's my preferred way. Someone else tell her about your direct booking success. don't want to hog the show.
We launched into direct booking. We've done more inquiries than actual bookings. Our best and highest bookings are still through Vrbo. And our direct bookings, because we haven't gotten transaction, well, you're not doing them, but every, 60, 90 days. So it's hard to get fluent with it because we only have 2. They're clunky, and it's so nice when it's just, so the Vrbo setup, and they're paying top dollar through that, which is interesting, but we're still getting our best and highest rates net through Vrbo.
Why aren't you on Vrbo, Erin?
I have a little bit of discrimination against Vrbo, and it's only, it's not fair. It's just that I've never needed it. I've always filled the demand with Furnish Finder or Airbnb. And my issue with Vrbo is just that they existed way before Airbnb did. And then Airbnb just kind of brought them up because they were a better, more user-friendly platform. So it's not necessarily based on logic or anything else. It's just I haven't had a real need for them. And I kind of discriminate against them only because I feel like Airbnb really kind of led the way for something where they should have been the leader in it. But that's a flaw on my end. I should be on Vrbo. There's absolutely, it's dumb to not, you want to be across every platform and then obviously have that one-to-one booking if you can.
Well, definitely the top 2.
Yeah, I guess I'm curious about, like, with Vrbo, are you seeing any kind of differentiation between like 1 bedrooms versus 5 bedrooms? Is there a setup that's more popular on there?
It's all across the board, and usually get a more heads up, a longer lead time on Vrbo. That's what I see. But I like multiple safety nets. And before you need it.
No, I totally agree. What does Vrbo charge?
They charge per, they stay right there with around Airbnb. They follow everything Airbnb does. So they're going to be pretty close to it. And it's non-consequential. It's, I always think about the cost of a vacancy. And I'm like,
No.
it doesn't matter. Just, it's fine.
Right. No, I totally agree with that. That said, I will say I prefer Furnish Finder. The $99 annually. Not that I think that the 3% that Airbnb takes is crazy, but I like Furnish Finder for a lot of reasons. I think it's a less sophisticated platform. I think that if you do professional photos and you're really good with your communication and the way you set up your headline, Furnish Finder, you're going to have a lot of demand there. And also that people that show up to Furnish Finder kind of know what they're getting. Like, they have that expectation of the 30+ day furnished rental. Whereas with Airbnb, they assume it's a shorter rental. And so you might set up that listing a little bit differently. And I'll talk about that in a minute. I'm less fond of Airbnb only because I think there's a lot more competition. Here locally, there's about 140 more properties on Airbnb than Furnish Finder if you were going to do an October 1st to December 1st search. So it's also a volume game, right? Like, you're going to have more people on Airbnb, but I know a lot of my clients are not familiar with the fact that you can do these 30+ day listings on Airbnb. I think that might be changing because I think Airbnb is definitely trying to take over this space and is getting more and more aggressive with it. But I think with Furnish Finder, they come in and they know what to expect, and then your competition is less. You have fewer reviews. You do your lease outside of Furnish Finder, which is nice too because they don't have that conflict of interest the way Airbnb does. Then Airbnb takes 3%, which is, a bigger fee if it's extended. I don't like how aggressive Airbnb is with their algorithm. I find that somewhat annoying. And then you just have more competition with Airbnb. So definitely my preference is Furnish Finder, but the 2 that I source from are Airbnb and Furnish Finder. And I know I should be on Vrbo. I just have resisted it, but maybe after this talk, I will get on there.
Okay. As long as you're filled, that's the good thing.
Yeah. No, we have had no problem being filled, but it's interesting that you guys are doing one-to-one and then also using Vrbo. Okay, tip number 4, pet friendly. So I am totally pro bringing in pets. And the reason for that is that the cost ratio benefit is improved to you. I was just looking at this, and it looks like there's about a $40 difference in damage claims that are made between people that bring in pets versus ones that don't. And so you pay $40 more annually in your damages for people that bring in pets, but then you can charge a lot more. So you actually end up better. I think depending on the size of the pet and depending on the breed, you're probably still just in general, there's not a ton of risk there. And then it knocks out a lot of competition. I know in the book I had put, I had read a stat somewhere that said only 3% of Airbnbs allow for pets. I guess I question if that's still true. Again, I think people might be more friendly to it, or the fact that Airbnb has added the filter of allowing pets more recently, if that is increasing the number for it. But I just feel like I have no problem. I have allowed pets. I always ask about the pets. I want to see a picture of the pet. And then I know some of the people that I interviewed for the book too were saying a lot of the places that were anti-pet, if you emailed them, it would allow you to bring a pet. So it's like, just go ahead and put that you're pet friendly.
What's your monthly pet fee on Furnish Finder?
It is, so I put an additional $100 deposit on them. And then depending on the size of the dog, so let's say a 20 to 30 pound dog, I would put like a $25 to $50 additional fee. If it was a German Shepherd or somebody that's really hairy, some breed that's really hairy, then I would increase that, probably to 100. I'm not crazy about having somebody in that's, I mean, again, you're talking about your cleaner, and your cleaner is probably going to cover it. But again, there's a lot of damage that bigger dogs, really hairy dogs can do. So I kind of want to limit that and also charge them appropriately for it. What do you charge?
I'm $49. I can bump that up. And in some places we have a weight limit when there's other dogs around, in the common area is 35 pounds. But
Yeah.
I like pets. The thing I find is if we have a pet that's and they move out, my cleaner does her thing, but we got to come back the next day and vacuum up more hair because it definitely settles out, and probably the day after. So I always keep that in mind. And I like a day in between turns as well.
I totally agree. And I think, it's interesting. I've always said a 30 pound limit, but I always, again, felt like that was just me being discriminatory because I have 2 dogs and they're both under 30 pounds. So it's like, that's where I'm just setting it at, right? But it's like, I'm not sure that that's actually appropriate, but I know like my dogs are kind of little. They're not, their tail is not going to cause a lot of damage on the coffee table, and they also don't shed a lot. But it's not that I think that that's necessarily the best thing, but it is interesting to hear that you put it at 35 pounds. And
you got rose colored glasses, sister. Rose colored glasses.
Well, I have a question. When you're talking about, you get your $100 deposit and then you said maybe $75. Are you saying per month or just extra?
No, I would, like, if it's a breed type that is really big and I think is going to cause issues, I would charge, 50 plus on that because, 50 to 100.
You're talking about 50 per month?
Yeah. I put the cleaning deposit and then a little extra on them because I think that they really want to bring in that animal, and that animal, if it's bigger, is going to cause more damage to my furniture. And potentially, the cleaning is one thing. It's what you're talking about with, you're going to have additional people come in, but also I just worry about the damage to the furniture with the big animal.
Right on.
Okay, so what you're saying is when you write the contract, you're writing that the rent is $2,000 a month and plus another $50 a month for your pet.
Yes, plus an additional cleaning fee.
Right.
So
and then are you charging per pet? I mean, are you saying if you have 2 dogs, you're going to ask for $100 more, or are you asking for just $50 for the 2 dogs?
No, it probably depends on the breed size and the number of dogs. I don't know that I've ever been in the scenario where we had 2 dogs come in. I have 2 dogs, but I don't know that I've had a tenant that's had 2 dogs. And I'm not sure, again, like, I'm not very worried about a Shih Tzu that comes in. I'm much more worried about that bigger dog. So again, the Shih Tzu, I might just put a cleaning fee on them. It's the bigger breeds where, and that is something that you probably want to establish before you're having that conversation. But someone comes in and they have, a golden retriever and a Shih Tzu, then obviously I'm going to charge more for that. And I think, it is reasonable to think about it as you would charge more for more people in the house. So you could charge more for more animals in the house, but I would probably adjust it depending on breed and size.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but the thing is Airbnb limits you on that now. They've kind of handcuffed us because so anyway, Airbnb, it's great for direct bookings, but Airbnb, you don't have that kind of flexibility. They cap you.
I believe that. And then again, it's one of those things where I prefer Furnish Finder to it because again, Furnish Finder, you're not doing any leasing or anything through there. The lease is separate, so you can kind of dictate those terms. But Airbnb does have limitations on that.
Well, just for the record, we've not charged extra for the birds.
It's $49 per month per animal for me. I'll get that bird. That bird's got to pay.
We haven't had cats come in. Has anyone had someone travel with a cat? Because I would allow for a cat, but honestly, I feel like I'd be a little bit nervous because a vindictive cat can do a lot of damage.
Yeah, you got to have before and after pictures for the cats. I had one dude traveling with 3 cats, and that's when I put my 2-cat limit. That caught me off guard. But yeah, we took a round of before pictures and we agreed on it, and a round of after pictures because my cat scratches. I don't trust cats.
Yeah, I don't either. And they pee like when they're angry. I had a cat in my early college days that peed, not would all the time, but like peed on the mattress one time. And it's like the mattress is now kind of ruined. I mean, you can't have a mattress with cat pee on it. It has to be replaced. So
Well,
that's always
All right.
with our experience, it was the cat litter. It was just everywhere in our house. I mean, because it got cracked because we had hardwood floors. And so how cat litter just kind of goes. And so that was unpleasant.
Yeah, totally. On a final note on this deck, I would just say check with insurance on certain breeds, just because German Shepherds and Huskies were coming up a lot as breeds that insurance weren't necessarily crazy about. So if you're going to do a rental and you're using your home insurance, just make sure that the home insurance knows exactly what you're doing and see if there's any breeds that they're not happy about. All right, tip number 5, headlines and professional photos. I cannot emphasize professional photos enough.
We hear you pounding. We hear you pounding on the table.
Yeah, because I feel like people are like, well, my iPhone takes a great photo. And it's like, yeah, I believe that. But a professional photographer gets paid their money for a reason. It does make a difference. And it's not a very expensive. It's not a major expense, and it makes a huge difference. And I feel like, again, this is a dating profile for your real estate. And so it needs to be top-notch photos, and probably to have a lot of furniture cleared out so that it looks a little bit nicer. I think people are hip to that. They kind of understand it. I know with some of the consulting work I've done in the last month, what I am noticing when I look at people's profiles is that they're talking about generic stuff like gorgeous, chic, charming, beautiful. And I'm not sure that really brings value, right? Like that, first of all, those terms are subjective depending on who is looking at it, and hopefully the photos will relay that anyways. So I think it's smarter to replace that language with specifics. So again, Furnish Finder, you're coming in with the idea that you are going to rent for 30 days or more. So with Furnish Finder, I would be much more of like pet friendly, fenced in yard, half a mile to this hospital, half a mile to this college, in this neighborhood in the headline. And then for Airbnb, I would put in 30+ day rentals or remote work friendly or super fast Wi-Fi. I don't know, stuff like that, where you're a little bit more specific. I would strip out some of that generic language and then be more exacting about what is different about your property.
100% agree. If I hear the word charming again, I'm going to choke somebody.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and I don't disagree with that. Like, I'll see a charming bungalow, and I completely agree. It is charming, but it's like, what value is that adding? Like, you're scrolling, 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 and you have definite things in mind. Like when James and I went to Mexico in December of last year, it's like, okay, what we care about is Wi-Fi, and if there's a pool on site, So if someone had put like, rooftop pool, that would have we would have honed right in on that one. So just think about what people care about most and be specific with it. I think that's a much better use of the headline than these generic and subjective terms. All right, tip number 6, desks and second screens. So I kind of came to this conclusion, because we know that white collar workers are moving more and more into this world, but also because some of the people that I interviewed for the book were talking about their limitations trying to do their work from these companies. I have a friend that's in the finance industry, and she was saying, she was doing her work in the bathroom or just really awkward places because they weren't actually set up that well. And so I think 2 desks, probably because if you have one white collar worker, their spouse is likely also a white collar worker that can travel. So they're probably both professionals. And so I think 2 desks, if you can do it, is a great thing. I think a second screen is really important just because I think if you have worked in the corporate world, you're probably used to having a second screen. And it's not something that I'm seeing a lot of people offer. It's one of those things that I would make I don't know that I'd make it a top bullet point, but I would put it in pretty early in your paragraphs. And I would definitely have a photo of your office setup. I think power strips are helpful, a cork board or whiteboard. Corkboard or a whiteboard, some kind of organized setup, I think will photograph well. So these things are kind of a little bit of a debate around them, because how much does it actually get you a renter, and how much will it change the money, or change the amount of money that you're getting? I think a well organized space that looks like it's set up for an office worker will appeal to them. And again, I think you can do a little bit of coaching also on the back end if they're doing reviews. Maybe say, in your review, can you mention there were second screens, there were power strips. It was really set up for professional work. And with that, privacy and a white noise machine, I think that privacy is just actually having an office space so that if they are traveling with kids or they have to have conversations, they have that privacy. I put a white noise machine because I think there's some value to that, but every
Hi, do
smart.
you deliver to Arizona Grand Resort?
No.
That's Valerie going off. She's traveling, so keep going.
Okay.
Keep going, Arizona. One thing I've add, Erin, into that is showing the view from the workspace. That's one little ninja thing I would add in there.
I like that a lot. I think that's a great tip, right? Because again, these people are going somewhere cool with the idea that they're going to work there. So having the view of like, you work, but you get to look at this, I'm sure is very popular. And then that white noise machine, I mentioned that because I think, again, it's sort of a privacy issue, but any smartphone will have a white noise machine, so it's not that exciting.
Oh, really?
Okay.
I did not know that. Thank you for that tip.
Yeah. Any phone will have, you can put pink noise on through Spotify or whatever, but I think just putting in a white noise machine, when you think if they're traveling with kids, that is especially useful. But again, we're out of COVID times. Kids are probably back at their schools. I don't know how many people are actually traveling with kids, but it's a thought. All right, number 7, vetting. So I use Zillow Rental Manager. People have asked me if I use the one in Furnish Finder. I don't. I just use Zillow Rental Manager because there's kind of a couple benefits to this. It's cheap and easy. It goes straight to them. They can fill out the information. But also, if I choose not to use them, they can use it with other, they can use it with other landlords that they're working with. And I think that Zillow probably has higher cachet than Furnish Finder. So I've been really happy with it. I like it. I usually, if comes in and they're interested, if they, if I say I want a credit or background check, I want that back in 1 week. I want the lease signed in 1 week. I want to know you're serious about it and not lose a lot of downtime. Biggest tip is communication. I think that when people ask me about vetting, I'm always like, communication is number one. How do they write an email? How fast do they get back to you? I like this for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is that if they lose their job or something, they're going to be communicating with you about what's happening, and you guys hopefully can come to some kind of agreement. But I just think communication is your strongest vetting tool. If they are good communicators, they might make for good tenants. If they're terrible communicators, they might be bad tenants.
That's good.
That's just been my experience. And someone had said it to me. One of my clients that was an investor mentioned a long time ago, as long as someone's still communicating with me, I would never evict them. I would never anything. And I thought, that's right. Communication makes everybody's life easier. And that's what you should be looking for in a tenant. And then finally, no key exchange until the first month and deposit. So I require someone give me the first month's rent and the deposit, and I don't give them information on how to access the place until I have that. We had a situation maybe a year ago in one of our properties in Denver where we had a couch and we should have changed out that couch, but I feel like the place was fairly advertised. It had a picture of that couch. Just the couch had gotten old. But we had a picture of that couch, the setup, we always had it professionally cleaned, but we had 2 people in a 6-month period come in and then walk out and say, like, it was so dirty and it was so this and it was so that. And it was like, it's not. And like, we need photos of what you're talking about. And we felt like it was unreasonable. So after that, actually before that, we were cleared on this, that we had the first month and the deposit. And so it's fine. They should be able to get out of the lease if they want to get out of the lease, but they're going to feel a little pain with that, and we're going to feel a little pain with that. And so we ended up getting people in quickly and then kind of refunding them the difference. But I didn't want to lose time on that, where I felt like, I'm not really sure, like, your expectations were, we didn't advertise to be anything different than what we were. And so you don't want to be here, that's fine. But I don't want to lose time where I'm not advertising to someone else. And then you're coming in and, just deciding you don't want to be here.
I really appreciate the video you did on that about, you should have just went ahead and got a new one, and the pain that that not just getting a new thing cost you. I think it was a new oven. It was an oven and a sofa.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that couch, we had 2 different people come in and say that couch is gross. And so I think we learned, like, you definitely don't, to your point, like, lost time or downtime vacancy costs you a lot of money. And so I think it was a lesson for us, like, let's not be stupid about this. We've had 2 different people come in and have a reaction to that couch. So the couch has to go. And I think in the future, we would be more proactive or faster about doing it. On the flip side of that, I guess I would say, I also felt like these tenants maybe were a little bit unreasonable, in my opinion, because the properties had been professionally cleaned and we had come in. So I was a little bit like, I don't necessarily agree with that. But again, you're seeing a pattern where people are like, I don't like that, fix it quickly for your own headaches. All right, tip number 8, the lease. So protect yourself with the lease. I'm sure everyone on this call knows that. But again, Airbnb, it's a little bit trickier because you might feel like you're protected through Airbnb. But if you have a 30+ day through your Airbnb, I would and I do lease them outside of Airbnb. I'm not a lawyer, I don't know, but I do think the law follows intent. And so a lease certainly isn't going to hurt you. Furnish Finder, it's different. It's more obvious, in my opinion, because Furnish Finder, there is no agreement through that website. So you just automatically know you have to do a lease. I think that there's confusion on Airbnb. I'm always surprised they talk about it as a 28+ day stay. My experience in Colorado, calling all the different cities and finding out if they have short-term rental laws or not, it's always 30+ days. It's never a 28 day, it's 30+ days. So if you did a 28-day lease, you're still vulnerable to short-term rental laws where the city could come in and say, no, that it's probably not going to happen because it is an extended person. And so who's going to complain? The neighbors are going to complain. They probably won't care as much with a 28 plus day, but to be fully protected, it needs to be 30 plus days. But then that creates squatters issues. And again, squatters issues, I think, are different. I don't know if it's different state to state or city to city, but that lease will help protect you on that. And then finally, the lease.
One,
Sorry,
one,
go
of,
ahead.
one of the people in my group, Bethany, Seattle, and we're going to flesh this out a little bit more. She's talking about a housing program instead of this lease. So they sign up for the housing program. And so I'm trying to find I'm looking into it to see if that gets you out of some of those restraints. What's the benefits? What's the downfalls, and how that would hold up? So stay tuned. Stay tuned, Erin.
Yeah, I will, because I'm not familiar with that housing program at all. Is that something specific to Seattle?
No, that's just another way of trying to dodge the lease and the landlord-tenant laws.
Yeah. I know someone I was talking to the other day was concerned about Colorado because Colorado is becoming more and more favorable toward tenants and less favorable toward the landlord. And I think the truth of the matter, I certainly see this on the real estate side as someone that represents buyers a lot, is that buyers in Colorado are very much favored over sellers. If you're a buyer, you can get out of the contract a lot, but the seller can't. However, sellers have had outsized power for the last 5 years, and so they're breaking promises all the time. And sometimes it will understandably really upset the buyers, and it's like, I'm going to sue them. But just like the lease and just like that contract, it's like it has its limitations. And it's one thing to think about how you're protected via the law. It's another thing to think about what your time and money and the fight with your spouse and getting someone else in is worth. So sometimes I think cut your losses. It's
Right.
not fun. But again, the best way to vet against this is communication. So that is always my tip on that, is you really don't want to be taking anyone to court. It probably is not going to benefit you that much, especially with someone that maybe doesn't have the money to even pay the rent. They don't have the money for court fees or anything else.
Excuse me, sorry to interrupt, but something I'm working on is called a guest agreement, which is similar to what a hotel uses. So they can also just call the sheriff's department and have you removed if you broke the agreement, house rules, non-payment of your nightly rate. So it's with an attorney right now to clarify it and get it straight.
Oh, yeah. Share that with us, Ruben, when you
I'm
get
sorry,
that.
what?
Keep share that with us. We'll bring you on for one of the monthly calls once you get that.
Absolutely, sure.
Yeah, I would be very interested in that, like a guest agreement and something where so a lawyer's helping you with it. So it is by the
Yeah,
law.
something I've been using, but I just want to make sure it's totally legal. I haven't had to have a problem where I had to get rid of anybody, but just in the future, we just talked about it and said, well, you know what? We should make sure that it is legal, in our area. I'm in Florida, so. Florida's a pretty good state. It's a landlord state, so if I have to evict somebody, 30 days I can get it done. But still, it's 30 days.
I think sometimes with this stuff too, and I might be naive because I really haven't had that bad of an experience yet, but I think sometimes with this stuff, law or not, just setting the expectation up front or kind of, letting them know that you're paying attention with a document that they have to sign or sign off on. Again, a savvy criminal is going to know how to get around this, but I think
Sure.
for your average person, they're going to
say
say
the criminal will probably be familiar with it and probably wouldn't rent it. and
Yeah,
move it to somebody else. So I've been pretty lucky. 15 years being a landlord, I've only had one eviction, so I've been pretty lucky.
I like hearing that because I think a lot of my clients sometimes have, reluctance about becoming a landlord because they're worried about these worst case scenarios, but that just really hasn't been my experience. And a lot of my investors, it hasn't been their experience either. Not to say that it doesn't happen and that it doesn't happen to people that are fully responsible, but I think sometimes you hear about the horror stories much more than you hear. You know, the horror stories are 2%, and 98% of the time it's fine.
I think
Uh,
most of it is people not doing their due diligence.
mhm.
That's mostly it, I think. People, oh, he rented it for 6 months, he paid me 6 months ahead. That's a red flag to me. But some people get caught with that.
That's interesting. My husband and I were just having a conversation about that because we have some tenants that are paying us 6 months ahead, but we were saying, is this a red flag? And obviously you feel that it is. We shall see on that note. Okay, and then finally, tip number 9, I guess not finally, we have a tip number 10, but maintenance calls. This is something that I've started to build into the lease because I feel like the tenant will be happier and I will be happier if we're not talking very much. But I also don't want someone to go crazy with doing maintenance calls all the time. So our lease, looking at it, is set at 250. I'd probably bump it up to 500. They have to pay the first. In this case, it was 10%, so $25. If it was 500, I would move it up to 50. If they were there for 6 months to a year, I would say 2 to 3 calls. They can do that, manage it all without me, where they don't need to get clearance, and I'll just pay for it. After that $500 mark, they need to check with me. And if they, hit that third call in 6 months, then this seems like somebody that's really high maintenance, and I want them to check with me before they do the fourth call. But I find, I make the tenant responsible for this, so they're basically taking care of the maintenance themselves, and then we will compensate for them, or they can just charge it straight to us through whoever the contractor is. But I really don't want to be playing telephone, and I definitely don't want to be playing telephone on weekends or nights. It's like, you could, I think, also provide a list of approved contractors or people that you really like, to also help you feel comfortable with this as a landlord. But I have really liked this because I actually, again, I don't want to be playing telephone. I don't want to be managing this. If I trust my tenants, I trust them to be on top of this and to do it. And I don't want to be involved as much as possible. All right. And then finally, tip number 10, I'm coming in right at an hour. I'm happy about this. Analysis paralysis is a real thing. Nightmare stories, I kind of just talked about this, that the majority of your rentals are fine, but that's not what we hear about in the news. It is, you hear, it's not an interesting news story if everything is going well, right? That's why we never hear about it. And it's not just with the news, amongst your friends and your community, people aren't talking about, the great tenants that they had. They're talking about, the horror story, the worst case scenario. This actually did make me laugh. I have a friend from high school who rents out in Colorado Springs. She's an appraiser. She's been doing rentals since she was 21, and she went on her honeymoon. And when she was on her honeymoon, one of her properties flooded. And when she returned home, the tenant had sent her a letter via snail mail that said the property is flooding. So she comes home from her honeymoon to a letter that has come through the mail saying that the property is flooded. And so she was not very happy. That is definitely the worst scenario that I've heard of, and really kind of the only super bad one that I've heard of. But I think, again, much more emphasis on the ones that go bad than the ones that go good. I think the majority go well. Communication, again, is my best thought about vetting. And then analysis paralysis is a real thing. We'll see how this changes now that the interest rates have gone up. But in Denver and Colorado Springs, sometimes we would have clients that, they don't want to look stupid. They want to have a really good investment. And I understand that. But, while you're running all your numbers and trying to figure out which property you can make $100 more on a month, you're losing $50,000 in buying power because the appreciation is going up and up and up and up. So sometimes I think it's not necessarily that you're looking for the perfect property. You're just looking to avoid really huge mistakes that you're going to regret in the future. And again, I live in a community where the appreciation has been going up and there's a lot of demand to be here. So it's not, it's actually, not that hard of an equation. You can squeeze your numbers, and that is smart to the extent that you want to do that before you're going to lose money based off of the fact that you overthought it. So I will leave it on that end. I will just get to the links, but do you guys have questions or anything else that I can
Plug back up to your slide, plug the book again. There you go.
Up. Final
Let's do
sale
this.
piece left.
Yeah, do
Uh,
this.
So again, the book is available on Amazon. It is in Kindle or paperback format. This is the cover. But if you look on Amazon and you search American Nomads, Erin Spradlin, I'll come up. The subtext is finding and renting to remote workers, because again, I think that's the future of extended stays. And then consulting, if you're looking for any consulting help or just a second opinion, I do $100 per call, half an hour to an hour. But yeah,
How do they sign up for that? We're talking
So
about
you can
people on YouTube and everything.
yeah, you can find me on YouTube under Erin and James Real Estate, or you can email me at erinandjamesrealestate.com. So we like to name all of our businesses exactly what we are. So it's myself and my husband, erinandjamesrealestate.com. Website, erinandjamesrealestate.com. I'm on TikTok and Instagram.
You guys do the couple TikTok dance?
I'm sorry, what?
Do you guys dance on TikTok or anything like that? Interesting.
No, I'm way too uptight for dancing, and definitely too uptight for dancing on TikTok. But more props to the people that do feel comfortable with that, but I am not one of them. Excuse me. Do you guys have any questions?
You guys got, see if we can get some questions in the last few minutes here. Wow.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Hi, thank you, Erin. Great presentation. Any tips for any tips for somebody just getting started out, like choosing location?
Yeah, I mean, I found, so I have a property that's 1.5 miles from a college. And even though people have been really happy and we've had a good relationship with the college students, they are saying that it's too far away. That is why they're not renewing the lease. So I guess with college students, at least, I would say if you're looking for that demographic, do 1 mile or less. Hospitals, you probably have more room. But again, my big tips on that would be just don't overthink it. And again, you're not trying to make a dumb decision. You know, you want to protect yourself from a dumb decision more than you want to make the perfect decision, right? So because you can run your numbers all day long. And this is, I guess I'm assuming you're thinking about buying a property versus converting a property you already have. I should ask you that. So are you thinking about converting, or is it a property that you're looking to buy to do this?
Both, actually. The converting one is in Austin, and then I was looking at the Seattle area, Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, I think for converting, then you already have the property, so you can kind of advertise it without a lot of risk. I think for buying, I would, get something that is close to the city or close to the ocean, close to the mountains, something where you can say you're a remote worker, you're coming into town for this reason to experience either the city or being near the ocean or having access to hiking. And so something that obviously has good access to that. You don't want them to be an hour out from anything attractive because they're moving to your community and deciding to work there for the benefit of being close to whatever your community has that somebody else doesn't.
Thank you.
We got one more question before we give her a round of applause.
I have a question.
Okay.
The winter season is coming up, and what are some of the tips to get people to come in? What do you do during the winter months? What tips do you have on hand?
Well, I don't think you're gonna like this answer, but I would say drop your price. I think if you have a little bit of time, obviously you're going to be more expensive until you get closer and closer to your date. But you're really trying to cover, and at least in my community, Denver and Colorado Springs, we're trying to cover the October to January, October to February spread. That's when it's really hard to get short-term renters. It's harder to get medium-term renters. So as you're hitting that deadline, whoever's going to be out in October, I would really start your prices by $50 every 2 weeks or something until someone secures it, and then obviously give preference to whoever's going to carry you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, give it up for Erin. Thank you so much. And go buy her book.
Thank you.
Let her know we appreciate you. And thank you so much, Erin. You are honorary ninja. So if you want to know about what we come up with our housing program or our the Rubin technique, I will fill you in on that. Otherwise, it's all secret ninja stuff, but we'll let you know. We'll let you know.
I would love that.
Can we see
All
the
right.
contact information again?
Oh, can you show your contact information one more time?
Oh, yeah, of course. Hang on.
And I'm going to send it out to all of you as well.
Oh,
See if
well,
you can
then
get
I
that screen. There it is. All right. Thank you so
Okay.
much. And we'll see everybody next week. And oh, not next week. We'll see you later on. We possibly can get Jesse on in October. But we're gonna get Jesse on in October, Jesse Vasquez. So we're gonna get that, the next celebrity. Thanks, Erin. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
I'm
Good night,
flattered.
everybody.
All right.
Thanks, Erin.
Thanks.
Good night.
Thanks, Al.
Good night.